I'm not going to read too much of this article. The majority of Americans are stressed about grocery costs, according to a new survey from the Associated Press NORC Center for Public Affairs Research. In the poll, 53% of respondents said that the cost of groceries is currently a major source of stress, while 33% said it is a minor source of stress and 14% it is not a source of stress. On Friday, President Trump's economy entered into a rough patch after the July jobs report showed the labor market only gained 106,000 jobs in the last 3 months. The Bureau of Labor Statistics report indicated that the economy and labor market are much weaker than previously thought and is set to raise questions about whether Trump's tariff regime is stopping businesses from hiring. Within Trump's first year back in office, his tariff policy has rattled markets, strained relationships with allies such as the European Union and Canada, and resulted in increased economic uncertainty. The AP NORC survey also found that 47% of respondents said the cost of housing is currently a major source of stress, while 27% says a minor source of stress, and 25% said it is not a source of stress. Now, that one surprised me. I would have expected the number of people saying the cost of housing is a major source of stress to be, I don't know, probably around like 60 or 70%. But that still shows you that between that 47 and that 20 whatever, you're looking at about 7/10 of the U.S. population that consider the cost of housing to either be a major issue or just to be an issue to some varying degree. Like, there's only a small fraction of us who are like, oh yeah, the cost of housing, cost of food, no big deal. And what I hate about that jobs report, the one was it the 106,000, is they don't ask, okay, of these 106,000 new jobs, over the last few months, how many of them are part time, which by extension means how many of them lack benefits. What to what extent are these jobs actually decent? Because, as I've said before, just from the anecdotal standpoint, if you're working a job that only gives you one shift a week, like I did, or two shifts a week, even something, food usually costs less than housing, significantly less. But even the cost of food, you're like, well, I'm only making what, 200 a week, and my groceries, even for me, like as a single person, each week is probably like between drinks and meals, probably ranges around $40 or $50, and that's on the low end. So if you're only getting the equivalent of 1 or 2 full days of work with the minimum wage, it is a pretty hefty amount of money to piss out. And you gotta remember that, like, I'm saying this strictly from the standpoint of one person trying to eat every week, every day each week, who's probably gonna eat, skip breakfast. And just what I'm getting at is, if you're someone who has, let's say, children or a wife, or just it's a family of 4 or a family of multiple people, groceries every week are easily gonna cross over $100 or $200. Um, and when you start adding it up, that means you could expect to possibly go through $1,000 every month just to eat. And that's not even counting all the different costs of, you know, gas and rent and water and all these other utilities and bills that people would have to pay to continue their daily living. But no, it's sad that this is another one of those issues where a lot of people voted for Trump because of inflation. Oh my God, look at how expensive things are, and they were. But he's really not doing anything to actually lower the cost of stuff. We are 1/8 of the way through his term, and I really don't see any improvements whatsoever with regard to the economy. I think we're heading into a recession. There's going to be, unfortunately, more and more expensive things. I got to a point with, like, just to go back to that whole thing of these jobs, I literally have gotten to a point where I don't buy anything except food, gas, and then whatever, again, assortment of bills, phone bill, etc. Because it is the constant, I should say, lack of stability with regard to working somewhere, right? I talked about all these different places. If you get hired by them, they want to do this little part-time crap where one week they can give you 15 hours, next week they can give you 5. Just the unstableness of it is what has caused me to really kind of not even bother getting anything outside of utilities. And for a lot of people, that's going to be the mindset they adopt, which is going to lead to more and more just stagnation with regard to the economy. That less and less things to buy. The smaller and thinner amounts of money that people make, the lesser the likelihood is that they'll go out and buy things, which is going to again lead to this issue that we're seeing. And not everyone is like me, but it's just an example of what I'm talking about, where the cost of food is ridiculous. Just in general, I think it's most of this stuff is too expensive, including at the market. I said there's something really wrong when you can just get just basic stuff, soup, or let's say you want to be healthy, some bananas or some apples, just different basic types of food. And this stuff together, if you get it as a group, is $30, $40, $50. Just absurd cost. But that's why I feel so bad for people, because they're having to, let's call it what it is, pick between living somewhere and having the ability to go out and get something to eat. And that's why I talked about the phenomenon of homeless people who have jobs, where these individuals are working, but they recognize that their hours are so minuscule, so uneven, that many of them will choose, or not, well, I shouldn't say choose, will forego living in a house with a set amount of money that they're going to, have to, usually a set amount that a lot of us think is overpriced. I agree with them. That is eating away at their ability to pay for other things. And it's screwed up. People shouldn't have to pick between being able to afford living somewhere and being able to eat. But it's basically just, again, another one of these extensions where there used to be that conversation of how one of the things that pushes people into poverty is medical bills, and how a lot of just the stupidity with regard to health insurance being tied to jobs, because a lot of people work jobs that again are part-time, which forces them to have to look for benefits from somewhere else, some third party, which is going to jack up the rates. And it's all part of that same thing of these basic essential things that you need to survive are simply overpriced. Not even necessarily because we have an idea of how much something should cost and then you contrast, but just the combination of the lack of money available to most people, along with the rising cost of things, just adds together to send someone sinking financially. And they'll call me a socialist, but is it really controversial that people should be able to eat? If I said we should have free food, am I saying they should make getting steak free and whatever other assortment of meals that are 4 stars? Or no, I'm saying, but basic stuff like apples and oranges and maybe some chicken. I don't. You can't tell me that there's not something wrong where a person is afraid that they're possibly not going to be able to afford eating. That's nuts. We talked about I think it was 2-3 months ago, the lady in Connecticut that was making over $100,000 with her husband, and because of how much she was getting charged in taxes, she was going to a food bank. And it was the craziest thing, because this is a family that makes 3 times the minimum wage. And remember, yearly minimum wage of 30 grand isn't even available to most of those jobs, because again, the whole part-time crap cuts it down to 13 or 14 grand. But still, someone who's making 2-3 times what a regular minimum wage worker would make with her husband, and they are so scared of the cost of food that they're having to go to a food bank like a regular old poor person, where even if they have a higher income, the cost of eating, as well as everything else, is just too damn scary. But again, if I say that food should be either free or a hell of a lot cheaper than it is, I get called a socialist. So we'll just have to keep dealing with the reality of going into a market, picking up, I don't know, food for the next 4 or 5 days, maybe some bags of chips, uh, maybe a salad, maybe some fruits, and then, oh, altogether this is 50, 60, $70. Wow. And there are people that want you to think this is normal, but what's so sad about it is, just like with gas cost, they're telling us, that we're just screwed when we're together. We're gonna just keep having these things that get more expensive every year, wages that are stagnant, our jobs don't want to give any hours, and then we'll just wither away from the also wonderful joy of living the American dream with regard to increased costs and less money to actually use to deal with these continuing and escalating individual raises. Yay.